Welcome to our presentation on improving predictions for human trafficking investigations in Brazil. This summer, let's first introduce our team and let's talk about the work we've done this summer.
Hi, I'm Madeline. I just finished my first year in the master's program in statistics here at Stanford and about to start my second year.
Hi, I'm Veer. I'm in New Jersey right now, and I'm going into my second year as a master's student in the Computational and Mathematical Engineering department.
My name is Michael. I'm originally from Warsaw, Poland, and I'm a rising senior in economics and political science at Stanford. This summer, we worked with the Human Trafficking Data Lab at Stanford. This is a brand new initiative that tries to redefine what the human trafficking scholarship is about. Traditionally, human trafficking scholarship was about qualitative data and analysis, and the Human Trafficking Data Lab tries to redefine it. The lab tries to shift from the qualitative perspective to a quantitative, a data-driven one. It originated in January 2019 when Luis Fabiano de Assis, a Brazilian prosecutor and a data scientist, gave a talk at Stanford outlining how the Brazilian human trafficking laws and the open data laws in Brazil could be used for advancing data-driven scholarship on this subject. So this summer, under the mentorship of Professor Michael Baiocchi, Madeline, Veer, and I worked on trying to improve predictions for human trafficking investigations that are done in Brazil by partnering with the job done by the Human Trafficking Data Lab. So the main question the Human Trafficking Data Lab tries to answer in that topic is, can the tools of data science help us look for patterns and clues from large pools of integrated data to help us understand how trafficking works and where it is likely to be found? The solution the Human Trafficking Data Lab came up with is the intuition engine. This is an ensemble predictive model that combines a variety of other models to create better predictions for human trafficking. So based on the quantitative data the lab has, there are 5 strands of the work: a network model, regression models, spatial models, natural language processing, as well as deep learning models. Throughout those 8 weeks, we've been focused on 2 of those strands: regression models, as well as natural language processing. Based on those 2 strands, we used 2 main data sets. First, there was a database of companies that we got from our partner, which we call company analysis. We used that for the regression models part. Then we got access to more than 5,000 investigative reports in a PDF format, which we used to help our partner with natural language processing. Now, I will pass over to Veer, who will introduce you to our work on company analysis.
All right, thanks, Michael, appreciate it. So let's dive into our company analysis. We had at our disposal many company-level data sets scattered across several databases, and you can see a sampling of the data that we work with on this slide. The dataset firms contains all unique firm IDs called CNPJs in Brazil. The number of establishments that each firm owns, their valuations, and their tax structure. The dirty list is a blacklist of firms involved in human trafficking in Brazil. These are not all firms who have human trafficked, but rather firms that the government decided to blacklist from obtaining credit from the central bank. Edges is the data set that contains the dirty list companies and connects them to their owners or companies that they own. And finally, sectors is a data set that houses sector membership data. Now, with all this in mind, let's move on to some of the data engineering decisions that we had to make. When we merged, we had to make several data engineering decisions in order to get our final product. One important decision was to create the dirty list plus indicator, which you can see on the right over here. So the 2 data sets that informed this indicator was a list of company codes, the dirty list, on the left, as well as company ownership data. So we defined company A, let's say, to be related to company B if company A owns company B or company B owns company A. Thus, our human trafficking indicator tags all firms on the dirty list or related to dirty list firms as potential companies of interest for Brazilian prosecutors and researchers in general. We'll refer to these firms as dirty list plus moving forward. Now, moving on to our results, I want to delineate 3 groups that we'll be analyzing in our work, which I'll describe on the next page. So the first group is just simply all firms in Brazil. The second group is our dirty list plus group that we just described. And the last group is derived from a data set that contains information on victims of human trafficking, such as the company that trafficked them, as well as where they were trafficked. these companies found to be involved in human trafficking by federal investigations, we'll call them investigated human trafficking firms. This group is a more representative sample of firms that are involved in human trafficking than the dirty list. Now, let's move on to some of our results. In this graph, we depict the proportion of each aforementioned group across company sizes. Company size here is determined by the number of establishments that a given company owns. 2 points are clear from this depiction. One, dirty list plus and investigated human trafficking firms are very different from the typical Brazilian firm, as they generally have more establishments than this average Brazilian firm. And two, it seems that dirty list plus firms and investigated human trafficking firms are pretty similar with respect to size. Now moving on to our second graph, we see a different picture. In this graph, we depict the proportion of each group across sectors. Again, it is clear that dirty list plus and investigated human trafficking firms are very different from the typical Brazilian firm, as they concentrate in different sectors. But it seems that dirty list plus firms and investigated human trafficking firms are slightly different with respect to sector, as the dirty list plus firms are highly concentrated in construction, whereas investigated human trafficking firms are more evenly spread out. Now, based on some of these initial results, there are a couple of takeaways that we want to share with you. So on the next slide, we see the 3 main takeaways that we want to share. The first one is that variables such as sector, number of establishments, and the valuation range show stark differences between dirty list plus and all companies in Brazil. Number 2, there's some evidence of the fact that dirty list plus is a poor indication of human trafficking in Brazil. And because of that, there is a need for a better signal of ground truth in human trafficking in Brazil. Thank you, and I'll move it on to Madeline.
Thanks, Veer. I'm going to move forward into our work with the investigative reports. So to begin, with the data given to us in a tabular format, we also had access to a baseline task force data set that incorporated information from investigations that have been carried out by the federal government in Brazil. So this is a data set of approximately 5,000 total investigations ranging from 1995 to 2018. And there are definitely a lot of missing information in this table, with only about half with values for both the number of people rescued in these investigations as well as the company ID. However, we're able to have the municipality code of all of these firms in this data set, which is really useful because we have about 15 different data sets that we can merge with this based on the municipality. So some of the municipality level data incorporates the GDP of a given area, as well as the population and human development index values. So that would incorporate things such as the education, longevity, and income of the residents of a given municipality. And we also have information about previous overall number of people rescued in municipalities from firms who have been found to be involved in human trafficking. So this information is really helpful to get a sense of a given area in Brazil and how that might be tied to a propensity of a firm to be involved in human trafficking. As we can see on the next slide, we've been doing some work on clustering cases based on both the municipal level data and the firm level data, but this work can definitely be augmented further in the future and really in a way that would allow investigators to see what other firms have been involved in similar areas, similar sectors, and be able to do more research into what has been successful in the past. We additionally would love to incorporate more municipal level data, which is currently being worked on by interns in the Human Trafficking Data Lab here at Stanford, and they've been doing great work in cleaning more municipal level data, which will definitely be helpful. Finally, we hope to enrich this investigations data set because as you could see previously, we're missing a lot of both company IDs as well as the outcome of the investigation. So if we had a more accurate indicator of a successful investigation, that would allow us to have more accurate analysis of what has been happening in Brazil. So we've started actually to gain access to a more accurate indicator. As you can see on the next slide, we've been working with PDFs that have been provided to us from Brazilian prosecutors. So we have a total of over 5,000 scanned documents ranging from 1995 to 2019, so slightly more recent than the tabular data we have. And these PDFs typically consist of a front page that would incorporate the company ID, the area, and some basic information on the investigation itself. Then the PDFs typically go into more of a report type format that summarizes the outcomes of the investigation. And then we'll typically have an annex at the end that will have various other scanned documents. So this is generally the framework of a PDF, but they definitely vary. And they also vary based on the year. Typically the more recent years are typed and then scanned. And the older ones definitely have more handwritten work. And in order to process these PDFs, we've been really thankful to be able to use Microsoft Azure and their OCR, their Read API OCR. So this has been really helpful in that it works with Portuguese, which is definitely a unique attribute of such a optical character recognition. And we've also really would like to thank CFA for their groundbreaking work that we have been able to build off of for our own work and try to analyze these PDFs and later be able to extract the information in order to see which investigations have been successful. So we end up having JSON type files as output with bounding boxes, which Michael will now expand upon.
Thank you, Madeline. So once we've done our OCR, we have received data in a format that you can look at in this picture. When we process those JSON files, we essentially receive a giant dictionary for further processing in Python. In this picture, you can see a few entities that are associated with a sample page in a PDF. For instance, when we look at this particular line, we receive this location of the page, the text that was read, and then another list of words that contains specific information on each word, such as location, the text that was read, and confidence. Confidence is just a probability that a text was read accurately. We were dealing both with typed PDFs as well as handwritten ones, and the confidence varied based on whether or not there was a typed or a handwritten PDF. We realized that with the more recent PDFs, the confidence levels were consistently over 90%. For instance, in the graph, you can see the confidence in 2019, which is about 96%. And the confidence levels that were lower for years, for instance, in the 90s, were associated with the fact that those PDFs oftentimes were handwritten. Even though they were handwritten, the confidence was still at about 87%, which was way higher than would be expected. Many of the PDF files, though, had some annexes. Annexes contained a lot of handwritten information, which was less relevant for the analysis. So even though those confidence levels were at about 80% in some cases, it is likely that this number was actually reduced by the fact that a lot of annexes were handwritten, so the actual confidence would be even about 90% for those older files. But the most important question with investigative reports is, how does our work help our project partners? So there are a few outputs that we have for our project partners that starts from a comprehensive file upload pipeline, a pipeline for further processing of investigative reports, but also other PDFs that could be processed for the Read API computer vision OCR in the Portuguese language. We have also processed the investigative reports in a JSON format and processed them as well as human readable text files that can be read even without looking at the PDFs themselves. We have confidence probabilities on those investigative reports. And finally, we have a guide that represents basic entity extraction using natural language processing that can be augmented with further investigative reports used by the Human Trafficking Data Lab. And the most important question is, okay, we're part of this multi-year process that is conducted by the Human Trafficking Data Lab. So what are the next steps that could be performed following our work? Madeline, would you like to talk about that?
Yes, that would be great. So yes, we're part of a very lengthy project, and we're excited at some of the possibilities of our current work. So the first big area that we see in the future is working with Spacey. So this is, again, really helpful to have the CFA team as kind of a trailblazer for us, but we realize that Spacey additionally has Portuguese functionality. And we've been able to do some basic models to automatically extract relevant data from these text files that we've created, but we definitely think that more complex work in the future would be very beneficial to our project partners. In addition, we would like to be able to continue to perform analyses to extract relationships between the variables and patterns in our data, especially when we have a more augmented data set. Going off of this, we also would like to be able to create a pipeline between our PDF analyses and take that information about what firms have been investigated and add more information about what infractions have been taken from different firms, which infractions have been found in the different investigations, what people have been rescued from these investigations, really to see what companies are really at fault for a large amount of human trafficking in Brazil. And finally, we would like to directly assess the impact of task forces, because investigators in Brazil are definitely constrained on their time and money in what they can actually investigate. So an area such as a remote part of the Amazon is definitely much less likely to be investigated just because of the days of travel and all of the resources that would be involved in investigating such a firm. So we definitely see work in the future at trying to understand the constraints and exactly what firms are involved in human trafficking. So we hope that our current work has been able to help advance the mission of the Human Trafficking Data Lab, and we really see the possibilities for this work in the future and are excited at all of the good that this organization should be able to have in Brazil. So thank you so much for your time, and we really appreciate you all being here. So thank you so much.